So, welcome to Insights Over Espresso, where we explore how AI is reshaping industries and accelerating innovation. And I'm your host, Joe Marone. And today I'm joined by Cory Neubauer, co founder and managing partner of Nextier Insurance Services. Welcome, Cory. I'm thrilled to
Oh,
have you.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're looking forward to a great conversation. So when we look at next tier insurance services, you specialize in, very specific and critical niche, California Homeowners Associations. Can you help everybody understand what initially drew you and Tina to focus on HOAs and what unique challenges and rewards come with serving this community?
No, it's a great question. I appreciate it. Family business. Actually married into the insurance business. My father-in-law is a longtime farmer's agent and had been focusing on this same exact product line. So worked with him for quite a few years, kind of learned a little bit more of the business, and then realized that there was a need for the independent market a few years ago. And so my wife and I rolled out from that agency and started our own independent agencies. This is the culmination of that, and the value or the effort that we're able to and results that we're able to achieve is right. Everyone's home is their biggest asset, right? And if you can help people protect that better,
Hmm.
as well as educate them on the process, because our HOA or homeowners association insurance is not very logical per se. It's pretty complex. And you have individual homeowners that are making decisions on this. So being able to educate them and have them better protected is the value that we bring to the table. And, when we can find, I mean, we have a scenario where we're able to save an HOA $300,000. Like, who doesn't like to be able to do that? So that's our goal here: finding better coverage and more value, so that their insurance dollar is spent more effectively.
Okay, excellent. So California's HOA and home insurance market are facing significant pressures, rising premiums, regulatory hurdles, climate risks like the wildfires. When you zoom out, what major shifts or trends do you think are most profoundly shaping the future of HOA insurance in California?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of those things, right? There's a lot of pressure on the insurance space, especially in California. And let's start with the LA fires, right? They're saying there's going to be somewhere about 250 billion with a B in losses. So those losses haven't been all realized yet, as well as inflation, right? Everything just costs more, especially after COVID. And you talk about the regulatory thing. We're in the most litigious state in the union, right? Which leads for a lot of regulation, a lot of rules, and a lot of people that want to quote help, right? So there's a lot of players in the mix, so it makes it challenging. So yeah, I mean there are a substantial amount of pressures, more so than most states in the country. But also too with insurance, right? These insurance companies aren't just state to state. They're national, if not international. So there is increasing complexities. But for California specific, right? It's how do you do this as strategically as possible? And it's becoming more challenging, and that's why you need experts in each one of these niches to really understand these markets. And that's what we've really decided to focus on, is helping this, you know, small subset of individuals as best as we can.
Yeah, so good segue. What do most people outside of the HOA insurance world either misunderstand or underestimate about the complexities involved in providing coverage and risk management for these communities?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we see is, at the end of the day, the value of a property is only valuable if you can buy or sell it, right? So the challenge we're seeing mostly is communities that can't get the proper insurance. It's fine. They have a risk profile. They have an exposure. But if they can't get a loan, what is your property actually worth? So we could talk about all the other details, but it really comes down to that. It comes down to lending. Can you lend? Because, right, 80%, 75, 80% of all loans within HOAs are through FHA. So if
Hmm.
you can't meet FHA standards, then what is your property worth? So it really boils down to that people don't understand the importance of this insurance, to make sure that you have adequate insurance in place so that the transactions can still take place. And that's down at the very, very core of it. The rest is, they don't understand the coverage. They don't understand the pricing, who's responsible for it. Those are all details that need to be vetted out. But if you want to take it down to the core, if you don't have enough insurance in place, that property cannot be sold or bought. And if you own a property and you want to move to your next property and you can't sell it, how much is your property worth? So
Yeah.
that's the biggest challenge.
I feel that. I feel it because my HOA charges an extreme amount, and they must have a guy who's bored because he drives around, and if he sees one weed in my flower beds, I get an email saying, "Hey, you have 3 weeks to remove the single weed."
We do have a perception issue within the HOA management space for sure. Right there, I think there's competing parties, right? To how do you stay in compliance, to how do you have, meaningful living, right? The idea of an HOA is to hopefully make life easier, right? You're not responsible for all of the maintenance of a household, right? You outsource that to the HOA. The problem is yeah, it's become you against the HOA. But at the end of the day, you are the HOA. So
Yeah.
it is challenging. I'll give you a quick story too with regards to your frustration with your HOA.
And I honestly respect that, because what they're
Yeah.
trying to do ultimately is keep
Yeah.
the values up. To
Yeah.
your point of, hey, what's the house worth?
I mean, and let's be honest, the reason why HOAs were created is, as cities and municipalities didn't want to have to take care of all of the streets and everything, you can privatize it, right? So that's
Yeah.
what they've done in those areas. And it's, density. You achieve a lot more density with condos, right? You can get a lot more units into a smaller space. But we have an HOA that between their insurance and putting away for their reserves, 70% of their money collected for their association assessments is used up by that. So that means they only have 30 cents to the dollar to effectively manage the community on a day-to-day basis. So
Wow.
this is a challenge that HOAs are facing, is that you're not seeing value because the money that's required to put in reserves for future things plus to insure it have gone up exponentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So Nextier, emphasizes a boutique client-centered approach, which I applaud you for, offering, complimentary insurance checkups and claims advocacy. How do you maintain this high-touch service model, especially as the demands of the market continue to evolve?
So I think the key is getting the right people in front of the client at the right time, right? And having the proper resources instead of doing it in a silo situation where there's only one person dealing with them, right? How can we break this apart and really be a team to handle that? That's with, local resources. Now, we're adding in virtual assistants. We have AI stuff that's being implemented. So all the touch points that people expect, but then still having the human interaction. Today, I'm going to a in-person board meeting to meet with the board directly, talk through their insurance challenges, meet with the homeowners directly, and be an asset to them. Well, I always say we like to walk hand in hand, not
Mm,
just show you a piece of paper and then walk away, right? Like the value is the education and the constant connection that you have. Just we had another client that, they're experiencing, the homeowners were asking a ton of questions. We were able to put a curated video together to the homeowners to explain the insurance and what their responsibilities are, what the HOA's responsibilities are, to give them the information that they need. And I think that's what people are really looking for these days is everything is self-service. You can go find anything you want. But
yeah.
when you have a question and you want someone, you want to talk to your uncle or your so-and-so that's going to just give you the confidence that that you're covered in the right fashion, that's where I think the value comes because people don't understand this and they want to talk to a professional that understands it and breaks it down to simple terms that they can understand. People talk at them with these big terms that they don't understand and they don't walk away feeling better. They walk away feeling even more confused. So how do we
Wow.
break this down and make it understandable to the average consumer? Because at the end of the day, the board member is a homeowner that's just trying to live their life, that's volunteered because they don't get paid to help make the community better. So how can we partner with them? So I think our values there. We do a lot of webinars, we do town hall meetings, we have podcasts. We write any way that we can get to whatever medium's necessary. is really, I think, the way that you can differentiate yourself. And that's what we're trying to do.
I'm curious, what's the breakdown of HOAs for townhomes, condos, and single-family dwellings in California? Is it predominantly townhomes and condos?
So there's about 55,000 HOAs in California alone, something
Okay.
like, I don't know, 370,000 in the US. In California, there is a higher density of those condos or kind of stacked units that you would call
Yeah.
versus you could be part of a condo and have your own house. It's just the common areas. But, I don't want to go into the exact number, but there's a high number of those condos that are multi-unit. You're impacted by your neighbor, right?
Right.
Because
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the biggest that's right, when you're living on top of somebody and right, and you're a different entity, right? Like, there's a new relationship that you have with these people if you like it or not, right? You
Yeah.
have to coexist. So those are the most challenging ones, and that's where I think we've been able to help the most,
Yeah.
because that is, there's such a large amount of property that's being insured that has to be
Right.
protected.
Right. Okay. So research highlights, growing demand for specialized HOA solution. The rising D&O claims from communication disputes and compliance issues. Can you share a real example of how Nextier has proactively helped an HOA navigate or mitigate a D&O liability risk?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting one, right? Because now with the onslaught of chat GPT, instant communication, right? A lot of people are over communicating, right? And the directors and officers, they have a fiduciary responsibility, right? And if they overstep that, they could be held accountable personally, right? Sued, not just the HOA, but sued, naming them that they'll have to defend, right? So it's really important for us to make sure that the boards are aware of those lines and that they don't cross those, right? Because there is protection under the policy if they act within a certain reasonable condition, right? But if they decide to go off the rails, right, there's only so much coverage. So I think that the big thing that we do is really informing them of that and making them aware of that. There is additional things of providing proper documentation. We have something called water deductible protocol or water intrusion policy. There's
Hmm.
certain things that can be put into place to help these insurance claims move more smoothly instead of waiting for the disaster to happen and then decide, okay, how are we going to address this? So we've found a lot better outcomes if the boards are proactive and we put those things in place so that when the solution or when the emergency happens, you're not scrambling. It's kind of like having a plan at your house, right? If you have an emergency response thing, this is where we're going to meet. We have extra food. We have this, right? When that disaster happens, you feel empowered, right? Instead of out of control. So those are the things that we can do in the sense of a specific thing. I can think of very many horror stories of what boards shouldn't do, right? But I think it's working with your legal counsel and using all of your professionals properly, and not waiting till the disaster happens and then bringing in your professionals to clean it up.
Yeah.
Because we see that we see that it has saved a lot of money. The ounce of prevention goes a long way versus trying to deal with unwinding bad choices. So for us, it's really it comes down to that education and awareness overall. Because the more they are aware, the more the boards are educated, the better decisions they make for themselves and the community.
Excellent. Looking ahead, what's next for Nextier Insurance Services? And how do you see your firm evolving over the next few years to meet the changing needs of California HOA?
Yeah, it's an exciting time because I think, with there, I mean, there's obviously, you know, all this AI stuff is great, right? But I still always say like this makes you an author, or excuse me, an editor, not an author, right? You still have to have the subject matter expert. And I think people still want a human experience, right? Even if everything is perfect, especially with insurance where it's a piece of paper and a promise, right? You need that reassurance there from a human aspect. So I think we're really leaning into that. How do we still keep the human aspect? Things like this are great, right? We're talking, but it's being recorded, and other people can see this and glean our experience or approach and say, hey, does that match what I want, right? Because I always say we were going to work with about 20% of the HOAs. that are out there, right? You're either, I can't help you because there's nothing to do. You're maybe too short-sighted, or the only thing that matters is price. Those are some of the things of like, hey, if that's there, there's avenues for that. But if you need support, you need education, you want to understand this, we can walk hand in hand. So that's where we see growth, big growth potential is we see a lot of the industry asleep at the wheel and not servicing this. So we want to service that aspect. And growth wise, I mean, I don't want to say that the sky's the limit, but we're a relatively small agency, and with 55,000 HOAs, there's quite a bit out there. Plus, we're pushing into other states as well. But
Oh, good.
from growth, you and I talked before about this. What tools we have, additional virtual assistants, we have a lot of automation going on, right? Getting the necessary steps taken care of in the background that
Hmm.
don't really touch the client. They affect the client and they need to be done. But do you need, your high level salesperson or account manager filling out an application? Or should they be meeting with the client directly, checking
Mm.
in to see how things are?
Yep.
Right? That human touch with automation put into it to help you stay on top of all those tasks, but you can still do the human touch.
Yep, I'd agree. So we talked about the rising insurance rates and how they're straining HOA budgets and increasing client insurance. So what are some of the most innovative strategies Nextier is implementing to retain clients and attract new ones in this challenging environment, other than, like you just said, getting in front of them?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about our market, right? Everyone's like, "Hey, can you just find a better rate?" Right? With the insurance market, right? We're a broker that's facilitating a policy, right? So we're at the liberty of the carriers. What do they want to see? So understanding their underwriting requirements, understanding where their fears are or their expectations are. If we can do that, then we can tell a better story, right? We can go back to them and dispel their myths or dispel their concerns, right? Every carrier has a different appetite, right? They like this type of product. They might have contracts with this particular wholesaler, whatever it might be. This is our ideal product type. So how do we find those carriers and place the best story in front of them? How do we address their issues? So that instead of just filling out an application saying, here you go. Prime example would be we've had a couple different situations. Right now we have one with a large fire claim, $1.5 million fire claim, open, and they want to shop somewhere else. Well, that's really challenging because that claim hasn't been resolved yet. But we're working with them now saying, look, it looks like the party that is at fault is going to be taking accountability for this. So can we get some additional information to the market to say, this isn't going to turn out to be as big of a claim as initially thought? So can we adjust the risk profile? So really what it is working closely with each account to understand it, identify the gray areas, find those, and then get those back out to the carriers to have them look at it in a different fashion. Also, the two is the bigger you are, right, the less time you have. We have time to maintain very close relationships with the head underwriters of these companies intimately. So we can go back to them saying, no, this isn't the case. Can you give them a different consideration? We just recently had one. We took over an account recently, the huge increase. They were at their wits' end. They came to us the day before the policy expired. They were trying to get an extension. They got a 15-day extension. That's all they could get. Because of our good relationship with the wholesaler, we were able to get a 30-day extension. And now we're going to be able to find them some other options, right? So it's all in that relationships that you have and the work that you put in before, so that when that problem or that opportunity comes up, you already have the pre-established relationships there, and then you can go ask for the exception, ask for the clarification, instead of just going through the front door, getting a no and saying, the best we could do, right? We see a lot of these brokers that are just renewing their current policy where they're at versus really going out to the market and shaking the trees and seeing if there's a different solution.
Wow. I wonder how many brokers really do that.
Well, the bigger you are, the challengier it is. And right, you can't go, I mean, it's kind of impossible to go out to every single market every single time, right? I mean, it's kind of, and I'm not putting anybody else down because I totally get it. Most, 95% of the time, current incumbent is going to be your best pricing. But are there other options available? We try to treat our renewals like new business, because if we lose that business, you have to go out and find new business. So every year is new business. Where
Yeah,
before in the past, it's it's on the back of the bus, just renew it and keep going, right? You have to stay sticky with all of your clients and make sure they know that you're there to support them.
that's a good point. So delays in providing master insurance documents can complicate real estate deals. We talked about that. How is Nextier streamlining its internal processes to ensure efficiency and client satisfaction, particularly as a boutique firm dealing with these time-sensitive issues?
Well, I'll give you an example. We got a phone call yesterday, and I'm calling the person back directly, right? The bigger you are, the more layers you have, and the challenge you have. We do all of our processing in house, where a lot of other companies use a third party to do this, right? So third party is great. Time is not always you're not always front of the line, if you know what I mean. So the challenge we have is a lot of times is there's other constraints that we're not able to overcome. But I think communication is key, right? If something's not available, can you communicate that it's not available and give a realistic timeline, right? People just want to know what to expect, even if you can't deliver it. Give them a timeline. I mean, I think that's been very successful for us. This doesn't seem logical. This is why it's happening, and this is what we expect. If those expectations don't pan out, we're going to let you know. I think that's the best that you can do. I mean, we can't, we're not miracle workers, but we can be as close to the process as possible and make sure that the insured is aware of what the actual process is.
Yeah, you certainly are living proof of your high touch philosophy. So we discussed when we spoke before how AI can automate HOA prospecting, predict renewal rates, personalize outreach. Are there any specific AI driven lead generation solutions that Nextier is currently either using or considering to reach, underserved California communities or perhaps to enhance your referral based growth?
Yeah, when you're in a very niche market like we are, right? The mass tools that are out there are sometimes too big of a stroke, right? So there's definitely some micro tools that we've been using. I think again with insurance, it's a little bit different because it is such a personal thing, right? We can get a call, but I always say probably 80, 90% of the calls that we're getting, we can't help because they're in a situation. I like to use the analogy of a mortgage. No matter how bad you want a mortgage, if you have a 600 credit score, someone probably can't help you, right? So that's the case, right? You can have all the intent in the world, but there's certain attributes of either the property, the finances, or the available carriers that aren't variables that can be moved. So that's the challenge that we have with lead generation of like, hey, we could have a million people calling in. So I think for us is we've kind of flipped the script of doing more attractive marketing to say, let's put out what we're doing and let those opportunities come to us when it resonates with them. Instead of what we used to say, the old spray and pray, right? Put it out to everybody and hopefully, you'll get something back. It used to be with mail order. If you get a 1% response, that's great, right? We're not trying to push through the masses. We have
Yep.
to use a scalpel instead of a chainsaw. So it's really a different thing. And we've found all those AI tools are great, for staying on top of things, processing. But on the lead generation stuff, we haven't found the master program or prescription yet. We're still on the hunt for that overall. So, but I mean, it's so promising. I mean, the stuff that can be done, the research. I mean, it's really made us superhuman, which is great because now the client, they get what they want quicker. And that's ideally, if you're unclear, you want clarification. If we can get you clarification quicker, you get to a decision faster. And that's really
Yeah.
what this is really working to help is making decisions easier to make.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like Nextier has had an incredible journey so far, navigating, the complex market with a client first approach. And you're living proof of that, always kind of getting in front of people face to face. If you had a magic wand to fix, one thing in your business right now that's either holding you back or slowing you down from achieving your vision, what would that one thing be and why?
Do we only one?
You could
No,
give
no,
me 3. I mean, but we want that lowest hanging, like, what's that one thing that, is you would fix if you had that magic wand?
I think the biggest thing is getting the proposal or the information to the client in the way that they want and being able to be dynamic with that, right? Because you can put a proposal together that's very detailed, but if someone doesn't understand insurance, is that going to resonate with them? And vice
Mm,
versa. If you give something that's very generic, someone that's super analytical is going to say, wait, this isn't right. So finding that solution to be able to almost have a dynamic proposal I think would be amazing to be able to drive that home. We do presentations with things now. We've been breaking these things down, but if we could solve that, that would be amazing. And we're working on a few tools that can do that, but that's been the challenging part because everybody perceives things differently, right? So how do you make it for the attorney or the property, a community manager, the homeowner that's an attorney, and then the homeowner that might be a homemaker, that they can all understand it. And that would be, if we could wave that wand, that would be absolutely amazing.
okay. What would the second thing be that you wanted to do?
A back end, right?
Oh,
Insurance is so terrestrial still, right? We have a core to forms, we have all these antiquated processes. So getting those super streamlined, and we're working on them and they're getting a lot better, having that whole process that
yeah,
takes so
so
much time.
more automation.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
not, I mean, the automation is thing, it's more some of the new AI stuff that can think, right? We have 50 plus years of knowledge between our high performers here. And I'm working to index it all so that I can just start asking the AI,
Yeah.
what would you do in this scenario? Instead of right now, that person has to get involved. Their knowledge is there,
Yep.
but right, how do we put this together? Like we put this opportunity in per so and so, they would have said this. So and so would have said this, da 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 da. And here's the evaluation,
Yep.
right? To really get that, because if we're going to process more and still keep the same boutique feel, that's has to speed up or be able to be sped up
Yeah,
in
I
order to
tell
do that.
owners, I wish I could do the Vulcan mind grip because it would make
Yeah,
work, like, taking all these workflows would be so much easier because
yeah.
like you said, you've got 22 years of information in your head, and I've got to try to get it out.
And that, yeah, that's the, but we've been working with some interesting things, right? Like we have dialogue with, we'll sit and have a conversation and we'll record it and say, okay, now give me the synopsis of this.
Yeah.
Right now, let's put this in as an index, right? What are the fears? What are the things that you look at? What are the concerns? Right now, we can use that as a training tool to say, hey, the next time this opportunity comes up, these are the things that need to be looked at, right?
Yeah.
So we're using that. The other one that we're working on is an appetite guide. So, like I said, every carrier has different things that they prefer. So, how do we put all of those appetites in there and then drop an opportunity in there and say, okay, tell me where I should go and why I should do it,
Hmm.
and give an explanation to the 20-year veteran that's going to pass the snuff test, right? They're like, oh no, they did look at this, they looked at this, they looked at this, right? All the attributes, because every community is different. So those
That's
are
right.
the things to be able to get superpower is what we're working on.
Good. Well, Corey, thank you again. Your insights were fantastic.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's definitely an exciting time, and I think these mediums are great to have, and appreciate you putting this